So now we're going to look at working up this gentleman's nose, not up his nose, clearly. We're going to look at working his nose to complete that area of the portrait. Things that are important to remember about noses: try and avoid, wherever possible, delineating it, so any harsh lines. What you don't want is just a great big outline of the nose to make it look like it's sort of stuck on. It needs to just be a continuation of all these peaks and troughs that we were already looking at to give it the definition, the shape. So as with all the areas of the face and the skin, it's picking out the highlights and the deepest darks and the darks behind it that are going to make it look like it's standing out. This photograph's been taken on a 3/4 angle, so that helps a lot in defining the nose, because you've got this natural edge with a darkness behind it, so it will stand out, which as opposed to when you're looking directly at somebody's nose, it can appear flat. It's harder to get the contours to be shown on the finished piece. So we're just going to work with the same skin tones we were using before, starting off with a creamy colour, just to bound these highlights just loosely, and putting in any big creases. I'm just going to take it up to the beginning of this brow bone here and put in this dark area, like I said, just to help define it. So even though our eye sees a line there, if you actually look closely at the photograph, it's not a line, it's an area where the dark behind it meets the light. So all the time we're thinking about that. Instead of drawing a line like that, we're just putting the edge of the pencil marks we're making up to the light area. Another couple of highlights there, sort of sneaky ones. They're not quite as bright, but they again will help give the shape and structure to the nose. I'm just going to work down around this area, down to this nasolabial fold there between his upper lip and the cheek. So this is just a general first layer, blocking in a bit of colour, just so basically just your first mark making, just so you're not afraid to go in and add the colour. Just going to take out some of those pencil lines. They were just to demonstrate where these darker areas go in. See, even here, instead of doing a straight line, I'm just doing a little raggedy one, a little bit of a hairy stroke to it, just to make it so it's not a harsh line, and altering the pressure as I'm going along. That helps also not create something that's too much of a straight mark. Faces don't tend to be made up of straight lines in real life, so we need to try and avoid using them when we're drawing them as well. So these couple of these prominent deep folds I'll just add in. Just gives us a reference point so that we know that these areas are in the right place. So already you can just see that just by putting a little bit of darkness there behind that, it's bringing the bridge of this nose forwards. The other area where people sometimes struggle to make their nose look realistic is around the nostrils. Again, it tends to be harshly outlining them, and that's easily done because you can clearly see the darkest area there. But what you need to try and do when you're translating that to a portrait is remember that the skin inside the nose joins onto the skin outside the nostril as well, so you need to make it more of a smooth transition when you're drawing it to prevent it looking like it's just a stuck-on black shape. Just very quickly blocking in all these areas of colour, and like with the, when we drew his eye, there's no need to be too painstakingly careful with the layer building on this, because his skin is not smooth like a baby's skin. It's got texture, which just allows us to work a little bit more quickly as well, which is good. Build up the image quicker. This is an interesting area here, because you can see the nose follows a line there, but also then there's a sort of dip in it where the contour of the bridge of the nose comes in. So we need to try and illustrate both of those points at the same time. So just imagine that we're drawing that one, it's almost straight. That's going to come to there, and then this dip goes in. So there is actually a darker area here. But again, we're not making it a harsh line. It also helps to just follow the curves of that bit of cheek behind, so we know we're defining the area. We know what that bit there is, coming up to that line there. And again, these shadowy areas at the front might just look like wiggly shadows, but they really are going to help define the nose and make it stand out from the page. So it's worth taking just a little minute to try and get them accurate, and to make note of these tiny little skinny highlights just along the edge of the nostril, because they're the thing that's going to bring the front of the nose forward. I'm going to use a bit of purple and go in and make those nostril shapes darker, bearing in mind what I said before, that particularly on this edge where it comes out, you need to be remembering that it's not got a harsh line. Joining into the surrounding skin. If you build it up in this way, you're going to get a much more natural look. See how when you look really closely, that shadow there going in to the nostril does actually blend into the nostril, the dark of the nostril. You can always add more dark. You can't very well take it away with colour pencil. That's why we work so slowly and steadily building up all the layers. Because it's, once you put it in, especially dark colours like these, they're very hard to remove. Got an area of highlight there that I mustn't forget about and cover over, because that again is another defining area. Another one of the sneaky highlights there. Just checking the level of his nostrils at the minute, 'cause I'm almost convincing myself that my drawing's wrong. Yeah, might just take that up a tiny bit. So the level of the nostrils were just looking a bit wonky there. Sometimes it can look that way until you've got all this surrounding shadow in. Here I'm just trying to make sure the sides are balanced up. If you see what I'm doing, just drawing a curve between the two areas. Just practicing doing that on the photograph helps me know that whether it's right or not on the actual drawing. The only part of defining line we've got to suggest the edge of this nose, this nostril, is this tiny little bit of red there. And then that colour under there. So they need to be in the right place too. Start adding in some of these freckles and marks. I've lost a little bit of that highlight there. Just take a bit of that back. I'm just going to alter the shape of this line too. Somehow got a bit lost. So yeah, remembering what I said before about the nostrils, obviously are important because they're a main feature. If you're looking at contrast on the picture, you can see that those are predominantly dark areas if you're squinting your eyes up and looking at the lights and darks, but equally as important is this little light area there that shows just as much definition of that area of the nose as the nostril. So just keeping on working on these areas that are going to help define everything for us, these darker areas that we can put in behind. To really bring that bridge of the nose out. Lost that tiny little bit where it goes around the corner there. Just trying to bring that back in. I'm just going to mark in the beginnings of this moustache just so I've got a reference point to know that I'm on track with all the directions of my slopes. Like that sloping line there of the nostril. If I put in this one, it helps me to see if it's balanced, because then I can see it visualise it as a triangle, and I can already see that I'm slightly out with that one. So sometimes if you feel like you're getting a bit stuck, just putting in a tiny bit of a different area. So maybe if you think you're not quite sure about an edge of a cheek or a jawline, putting in the hair behind or the shadows behind will sometimes just give you a reference point so you can check that you're working correctly. And it just again gives you the confidence to carry on and make sure and know in yourself that you're still following everything right. See how I'm still only gradually building those nostrils. I'm really not leaping in there with any bold dark marks. This is a good example of where it might be tempting to put a line in to define the edge of that nostril, but you can see on the photograph this almost out of focus bit blending into the focus area on his cheek. That is one smooth area of colour really. There's nothing there, there's no line there, and we need to try and be aware of that when we're making the marks. Almost make that shape with your pencil and then you'll know it's there. Just following contours. And again, there's no harsh line there, it's just where one edge of one colour meets the edge of another. And at the minute that line does look a bit like a harsh line, even though we know it's not, it's a fuzzy one, but obviously the more of the surrounding skin tone you put in on that area, the less it will look like that. It just looks that way because we've got it coming across a white piece of paper. And by making this area here dark, starting to bring in the last of the shaping of this front bit of nose. couple of areas to add a bit more definition to the shadow, and then we're getting something like finished. Obviously, as with all the other areas we've done, when you're doing it as an isolated thing like this, then when you go on and do the next adjacent area, it might become apparent that you have to touch things up when one thing becomes in relation to another. And just the tiniest touch of black in those darks. And any more work on that at the minute without developing this area here would be a mistake, so I'm going to stop it there. I hope that that has helped understand how you would treat the nose of an older gentleman with wrinkles.